Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The Foreign Ministry of the European Union stated in a confidential report, for the countries that are part of this international association, that the EU is concerned about the excessive concentration of powers in the Peace Council, recently established by President Donald Trump, during the International Economic Forum in Davos. Trump is known to have signed the charter, the Peace Council, and continues to invite leaders of a number of countries to it, as well as withdrawing their invitations, which has already happened with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. However, it is worth remembering that the Peace Council should have been created, according to the relevant decision of the UN Security Council, in order to help stabilize the situation in the Gaza Strip. In fact, the creation of such a council is part of the ceasefire agreement. Fire in the Middle East, and the gradual restoration of a stable situation in the region. Now, the Peace Council is being talked about as an organization that should seek to improve the situation in a number of international conflicts and will generally work, as they say, to improve establishing world peace. Although the relevant decision of the UN Security Council did not give this council any such opportunity. It was exclusively about the Gaza Strip, and it turns out that Donald Trump expanded the turnout order powers of the council. In addition, it is Trump who decides who will be included in the leadership of the Peace Council. As you know, he has formed an executive committee, which will be attended by his closest associates and even relatives, such as Steve Witkow or Jared. And all the other heads of state and government of the world will be present in this council as permanent or non-permanent members. As you know, Trump demands $1 billion for a permanent presence. It also goes far beyond the mandate that the Peace Council received from the UN Security Council. And most importantly, it is not clear what the powers of the Peace Council will be. Donald Trump says that when the council will be finally formed, because so far there is no one in it. The leaders of the most influential and authoritative states of the world, its members will be able to do whatever they want. But the Europeans are concerned not only about this phrase, but that Trump, just hiding behind the capabilities of the Peace Council, will make money on his behalf, which cannot be agreed upon at the level of the United Nations Security Council, or, for example, which cannot be agreed upon with NATO allies. And then it will turn out that Trump has at his disposal a club of completely different leaders of states that are not connected with the United States. The United States has the appropriate allied relations, but is ready to agree with any new proposal of the American president. Otherwise, why would Trump need a Belarusian leader in the Peace Council, which should in fact deal with the settlement of the situation in the Gaza Strip? Alexander Lukashenko. And here, of course, this is by no means the only such figure that raises questions. An invitation to the Council to Vladimir Putin, who has not yet given his consent but cynically promised to allocate $1 billion to Trump, the Russian assets confiscated, or rather frozen in the United States, is also another evidence of the rather great concern of those countries that would not like to be in the new structure, together with the Russian and Belarusian president. However, there may be another reason why Trump needs the World Council at all. And it does not lie in the foreign policy ambitions of the American president. Even as the head of state, he can take actions that do not require any coordination with Belarus or Russia, but just in the domestic political aspect. Because Trump, in essence, creates a new structure in which it is going to preside over life, if you want, of course. So far he says he's not sure this is necessary. And then we are already following a well-known path, which has been tested in a number of states that can hardly be called democratic. The head of state chooses his successor, the very successor who holds the post of president. and he himself finds himself in a certain new position. A new or other position, thanks to which he can exercise real authority. This is how Vladimir Putin acted when, after 2 terms as president of the Russian Federation, he put Dmitry Medvedev in the presidential chair, while he actually remained sovereign, the ruler of the country. This is how Nursultan Nazarbayev acted when he proposed Kassym-Jomart Tokayev as president of Kazakhstan instead of himself, while he remained in the position of supreme leader and leader of the nation, as well as secretary of the National Security Council, Security of Kazakhstan. As such, he also tried to preserve all the important levers of power. Trump may have such an idea, or someone can suggest it to him. Yes, of course, you can't rewrite the American Constitution for a specific person, even if that person wants to remain as head of state for the 3rd and even the 4th term, as Trump recently wrote on social networks. But on the other hand, if we imagine that Trump's nomination from the Republican Party will become the new president of the United States, and Trump will remain the president of the Peace Council for life, and thus will move the center of real power to Mar-a-Lago, while the new president of the United States will be invited to the Peace Council and will remain in this structure as another 1 conditional secretary of the regional committee, voting together with other invited heads of state of the world, with the only privilege that he will not have to pay $1 billion for the permanent presence of the United States in this structure. So much for the center of parallel power, especially if Donald Trump can to maintain full control over the Republican Party, which will still count on his popularity and charisma. Of course, today it looks more like political fiction, but a lot of what Donald Trump has already said, and a lot of what he has already done or is going to do back in January 2025 looked like a real political fantasy, but it has become a reality. So I would not discount the desire of the President of the United States to use any new structure under his leadership as a tool. Tools for strengthening and continuing their own influence and their own authority. Especially when we know how similar options have already been used by other rulers to continue their political career, let's say, in an unconstitutional, but quite real and tangible way by their compatriots. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel. Subscribe to it, subscribe to my social networks, to the channels in Patreon, Bame Coffee and Donatella, which helps to develop these resources. Use the function and sponsorship in YouTube itself. Peace to you.